Hi guys, welcome to the final session of this workshop. We ended up doing quite a lot, so I think there's about 5 parts, possibly 6 before this one. And we've just been gradually working our way through this project of creating an interior scene. The weather's starting to get a bit better now, so not quite so vital to, or you're not being forced to work inside like we were a few sort of weeks, months ago when we started this. But it's always a good project in any sort of situation where you're sort of trapped indoors, or you can't get out, you can't necessarily go sketch outdoors, but you want to be able to work from life and you want some kind of interesting subject, maybe a bit more than a still life. This is great. So do an interior scene. You can do an interior of pretty much anywhere. So the final thing we're going to do is we've pretty much wrapped up. There's a few little points I'm just going to tweak on this left hand side that I've noticed sort of in the gap between sessions. Little bit of adjustments, tweaks here and there, and then we'll sort of work our way top left down to the bottom here. Pretty much got this table blocked in, so it's largely going to be just this final little chunk to sort of pull everything together. Push the stuff that needs to be pushed back significantly, or sort of a reasonable amount in this area, so that we kind of create the sense of glow that we're going for through the lights. That's our sort of crucial thing, and probably a few final passes over some general sections of the drawing, just as I say, to try to pull this to look as bright, as absolutely bright as possible, and a little bit of erasing right at the end. So first thing I'm going to do is just a few little passes and some neatening. So we've got a little bit too light sort of through this section here, where we would see a shadow under the table. It's kind of a bit too bright, and probably that just came from wanting to maybe make the sections between the slats of the chair appear darker. But what's happened now is it looks a little bit like, before I started doing this, like the sort of background behind the table suddenly changes behind the chair, which doesn't really make sense. So I want to just go in and make sure that's dark enough. And also the table behind as well. But we're just about there with that stuff. And as I say, also just want to do a little final pass over some parts which maybe were a little bit too light. So this tabletop, for instance, this wood, it's not going to be as bright as, say, the white of the skull sitting right next to that light source. So I'm just going to do a few passes over that, just tone it down a little bit. Same goes for this chair. And these can be general passes again, knocking the whole section back. And that's just to try to create the right balance between... Sorry, my cat's decided to come up and meow loudly at me. And this floor as well underneath the chair could do with being just a bit generally darker too. So just again building all this stuff up. These gradual passes. And also just generally the wall up here, I want to create a little bit more of a bloom out from this light source. That's a bit better. So fairly minor adjustments, but these sorts of things do make a difference just to the overall statement of the picture. It's really going back to what we started with right at the beginning of the drawing. Yeah, that's not too bad. So we've got some, now moving into this area we haven't quite worked on, we've got some little dark shapes sort of sitting behind this skull, which are quite nice because they sort of frame it. They're not super sort of specific what's going on with them. Things can be a little bit more sort of abstract and less defined moving further back in the drawing because it's not the focal point of the piece. And just work on this ladder and wall as well. The wall itself that's sort of behind the ladder is not super complex. Mainly we just want to get the tone correct of that section. And sort of just even it out, so that sort of smoothing technique I've gone over in previous videos, I'll just kind of do that a little bit, just get it nice and smooth. It's not patchier than the rest of the drawing, because at the moment it's slightly patchier. Just going to smooth out, even out this tone. Just about there with that ladder. Now there's a few things like, I want to give a sense of the light reflecting because it's sort of metallic. The light reflecting on the section of the ladder that sort of pokes above the window. It's catching the light a bit, and a tiny bit just the top line as well. And then that takes us to this easel, which is a bit more of a kind of complex object, so we'll spend a little bit of time rendering it. And it's also reasonably dark against the, certainly the portions in shadow are pretty dark against the background, that window. And a lot of the rest of the wall as well. So I'm just looking at those forms, rendering them out, just exactly the same process as we've followed the whole time. And they're pretty simple forms in this easel. mostly pretty rectilinear. It's all straight lines. And there's a few places I just want to take out the light slightly, so just using my Kneadable eraser roll to a point. And again, just darken some of these tones out. There's a sort of a panel sitting at the bottom of the easel. If you're watching this this video and you've not actually watched the previous sort of ones, I recommend you watch them just because it sort of makes sense of what I'm doing. But also, I always mention, I forgot to mention at the beginning of this one, that there's a link to the reference image that I'm working from. Obviously the reference isn't up right now, but you can download that reference if you want to work from it, or better yet, it would be great if you work on your own a scene inside your house, some sort of interior scene or studio, and just sort of follow the same project but with something unique to you, specific to your space is best. But if you do want to work through exactly the same image, that you want to kind of follow my process using the same source material, you can do so just by clicking the link in the lesson description right down the bottom there. So I'm just working my way down this sort of architecture of this easel. Just about there with it, most of what we can see. Yeah, so that's not too bad for that easel. So then we're kind of getting to the very final thing. So we've got sort of wall and doorway behind here. Which we want to sort of appear fairly bright. I'm going to do a sort of final pass over at the very end using the eraser like this to just make any of those sections that need to be super bright really glow. There's a little bit of it just there, what the sort of thing we'll be doing. It's got this sort of diaphanous, well, not really diaphanous actually, the sheet, but it kind of looks quite transparent just because you've got light shining through it. It's got some kind of complex folds, so I'm going to go into tons of detail, but just try to capture the sense of these creases and folds as best we can. So sort of looking for that kind of sweep, that's parabolic almost sweep that you get with some hanging material or strings and stuff like that we can look for. And then also this kind of glow that comes through the center because that doorway is glowing through the sheets. The sheet's a lot darker around that doorway than it is where the doorway is showing through. So yeah, it's starting to read better now, that sheet. So yeah, we're pretty much just about there. Maybe go a little bit darker. Just this sort of slightly more ambiguous stuff in the background with the ladder, the floor. Just going to neaten that up a little bit. And also make sure it feels like it's connecting. I've not been, from the beginning, if you've watched the early sessions, we've not been too fussed about necessarily being perfect with our perspective. Everything's just been done by eye, and that kind of makes it just a little bit quicker as an exercise, a little bit more light-hearted than if you have to kind of draw out all your perspective. So perspective's not going to be perfect. That's the sort of thing you pretty much always have to scrutinize if you're going to get exactly right, unless you're very experienced with perspective, which some people are. But it's not crucial. We want to just we're trying to evoke the feeling of the space. So perfect perspective is not crucial to that. So we're at our final sort of little section now. We just want to go through. I'm just darkening at the moment a few little notes here and there, places that need to go really dark. And then the absolute final thing I'll do is knock back or take out the highlights again, sort of erase into them. So yeah, I think I'm pretty much there with all those shadows. They're all kind of nicely sorted. Kind of made them darker where things need to go darker. And the last thing I'll do is just go in and, as I say, just erase out the brightest bits where I want the light to really glow through. And if you're going to work, I've worked in a slightly sort of haphazard way prior to this, so there are some smudge sections. It means that when I do knock this back, the bits that I want to go super bright, there's this kind of ever so slight tone just from smudging and not always being super neat. But that's good, because what it means is that now that I'm kind of finished, I'm erasing these lights. They really kind of stand out, and that's what we want. We want them to feel like they're really glowing. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this one. I'll do a little bit of a kind of zoom in and out, and then zoom back out. A little bit of a pan around. I'm just going to loosen off my camera a bit. Kind of swivel around, and we can have a look at the whole scene, just so you get a feel for the level of detail that I've gone for with the graphite. So it's not super smooth up close, a bit of a more of a tonal focus, a focus on just creating a nice sense of glow across the whole piece, which I think it's achieved. And that's what you want to go for, so it's just kind of looking for that luminosity. It's always nice to go for luminosity. And if you build your tones up gradually, you don't press too hard too quickly, working in graphite, you can definitely achieve that. You could do the same thing in any other medium as well, but yeah, this one's just been conducted in graphite. So yeah, that's it, and we'll be working on something new next week. If this is the first time you've watched me work on this piece, there are a bunch of other videos that go through the entire process beforehand, so definitely have a look at those, and definitely sign up to the channel if you want more videos from myself, other tutors as well, and also just loads of other great content, interviews with artists, with students, and all sorts. And if you want to find out what sort of paid courses with tuition we offer, you can click the link through to the website and find out more there. But yeah, that's it for now, and I'll see you guys soon.